And because we're, yeah, you get to be, I don't know, just so it'll pick it up. I'm going to try and write some stuff down. And, you know, because you're reading two different books, you may have to fill in the gaps, tell them about your book a little bit, because they won't know. Okay? All right, go ahead.
Okay, well, in Henrietta Lacks, okay, well, it's like talking about how, like in like the first part of the book, it like kind of tells a little bit of her backstory, and then it like tells you how, she like found her like cervical cancer, and then it like tells her about her like life and like what happened before, and then like things that happened after. Like that's all that happened.
Yeah, so it talks about like her early life. Her mom died when she was really young, and so her dad was an unfit father, so he like gave up his like 10 children to different relatives. So she went to her grandfather, and that's where she met her husband.
And her husband was her cousin.
And so they like lived in the same room, and she had her first child with him at the age of 14.
And she had like 5 kids or 6 kids.
5 or 6, yeah.
And then like she found her like cancer like right after she had her like last kid. And she like noticed it in between her like 5th and 6th kid.
She felt like pain.
Yeah, she felt pain.
But they all thought it was just pregnancy. Pain.
So she didn't really do anything about it.
And they took her, like when the doctor was like checking out her tumor inside of her, they took out like part of it, and that's where like they got the cells. And then it went to like this one doctor, and like her cells, normal cells usually like die like an hour, like hours after they're like there, but hers like kept like multiplying, so that's like where we're at pretty much. So, go ahead.
Alright. Well, in 1984, this guy's name is Winston Smith, and they're basically living in a broken down London called Oceana, and they're always being watched. They live in like falling apart apartment buildings, and he has a tumor on his ankle, or not a tumor, an ulcer on his ankle. The elevator doesn't work. There's a telescreen that watches.
Elevator doesn't work.
Oh, it doesn't.
I know, that was just pretty random.
But there's a telescreen that can see everything you do, and it picks up sound. And there's like a big like weird poster or like painting. It's a picture of their supposed leader, and it said Big Brother is always watching. And everything starts with like victory, so like cigarettes are called Victory cigarettes, and like gin is called Victory gin. There's like the Ministry of Love, Ministry of Truth, the Thought Police, and you're not supposed to like document anything. So like if you have a diary, you'll like go to jail or be beat to death. And they also like rewrite the past. And if you like think, and the Thought Police catch you, they like go and torture you. You're next.
I mean, you feel? I'll go.
Isaac.
Winston, he keeps a diary. He wants to like take into account all he goes through. So he kind of keeps track of like his surroundings, and he has flashbacks to like his wife and what it was before the revolution started, what was it like, and he tries to get information from different people. So he leaves his apartment kind of later in the book, and he meets the guy at the store where he bought his journal. He tries to get more information about what it was like. So that's kind of where it's left off. So he's gonna find out.
Nothing. Nothing. Okay. Well, also I thought it was what?
You can talk about what stands out to you.
I thought it was weird how, like, Big Brother and like the whole surveillance system. They put those high-tech screens or telescreens in where people live, and and they monitor everyone, but they don't care about their living conditions. Like there's always not enough food, and their clothes are always falling apart, and they're not really like allowed to talk, and how everything they do, they're watched, and I thought the weirdest part was the 2-minute hate, how they had to were forced to watch a video of someone who is an enemy of the people. His name was Emmanuel Goldstein, and they he was like a leader or something to do with the party, and now everyone hates him because they were forced to hate him. They have to watch that video, and everyone gets like rowdy, and they start to like chant and stomp their feet, and it's violent.
One interesting thing about like the book that Phoebe and I are reading, she the author jumps around a lot, which it kind of gets confusing, but then it like all makes sense of why it's like mixed around.
So like she each chapter or even in different sections of the chapter, she goes from telling Henrietta's story to her finding the information from Henrietta's like family.
Yeah.
So she talks about like her like
Herself and
ways she went through it.
and like another thing that in each story, like there's like kind of how it was like in the war book that we read. What was that called?
What it's like to go to war.
Yeah, and like what it's like to go to war. You know how like there was like different stories, like but the stories like had individual meanings. That's kind of how like this book is too. Each chapter would mostly be around the same time, but it would like jump from. It was like before Henrietta, like her like early life, and then it was like in her 20s, and then it was like back to early life, and then like late life, and like how she died, and then like the day she died, and then kind of like just jumps around a lot.
Another interesting thing. Henrietta went through like a lot with like radiation and stuff. So there's a part in here, and it says like the skin from Henrietta's breast to her pelvis was charred a deep black from the radiation, and her entire stomach was like pitch black. And she's already African American, but it was like dark black, you know. So then, like the last chapter in the book, it says the devil of Cain itself, like that's what it's called. And it talks about her like passing away, but like she had to get like tied down because the pain was so horrible that she would like throw herself onto the floor. It was like she was like a demon. It was like reading it was scary. But like the doctors never said anything. So like Henrietta told her doctor several times that she thought the cancer was spreading, but the doctors would put like on her chart, the patient states that she feels fairly well. They would lie.
And they were very like briefed her, like they didn't really, like when they, there's like.
So she's already dead.
Yeah, she did.
Well, she died in the first part, yeah. But like, even like her family didn't know that her cells were taken from her until 25 years after her death. So like they didn't get any money from all the research that her cells like.
And her cells are like still alive today, which is pretty interesting.
They're still alive today.
Yeah. It's like the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks, because they're still alive. And like scientists use it, and it like helped with like the polio vaccine, and it like helped with, I can't remember, there was like a long list in here, but it helped with like a lot of things, like discovering how they like solved diseases and helped. But I don't know, I would say like this kind of relates like how they were, like you said in your book, that they were being watched. It kind of relates like the Henrietta thing, because they like took things from her and they didn't, like she didn't even know they took her cells and stuff. And they were kind of like watching her in some kind of way, just in a different.
I thought it was weird how when they're being watched, like how Big Brother is always watching them. When he's writing his diary and all of a sudden he finds himself writing down with Big Brother, and like writing something like that would get him killed by the thought police, but like he wants to hide it, but yet he wants to find other people against it so that he's like not alone and like can talk to someone else. And, like also there's this dark-haired girl where he like hates her, or he like loves her at the same time, because in the book they talk about how like pleasures in life, you can't have them like. They just said like it's just a pretty grim life, and that if you like think the thought police will come and get you, or if like if you don't do your job or like don't work hard enough, then you're just monitored at every move. So
I think the thought police are like quick to judge. Because even just like like Winston talks about, just a small expression on your face would give you away. And even just the thought police, they would think, like if you were not your normal self, or you just have a bad day, maybe sick, you would immediately think that you have a crime, or you're thinking of committing a crime, so they immediately arrest you, at least to your death penalty. I thought that was kind of creepy.
I thought it was funny how like there's the little junior spies, like the little kid police, how they monitor their parents if they do anything wrong. I forget where I read it, but they said that it was like related to like when Hitler was in charge, and they had the kids of the parents like monitor the parents to make sure they weren't rebelling against him. Like they would turn them in.
In the beginning of our book, there's like a little section on it, and it's like Deborah's voice, and it's like Henrietta's daughter. She was a baby when she was a baby when Henrietta died. So like when Henrietta was on her deathbed, she like told David to like take care of like Deborah, because Deborah like didn't get
Who's
to meet her.
David?
It's their fourth.
husband.
It's their fourth child, so it must be.
But like in like her little passage it says, "But I always have thought it was strange, if our mother selves done so much for medicine, how come her family can't afford to see no doctors? Don't make no sense." So like just thinking about it, like she went to so many hospitals and she cured like diseases for everyone, but her family can't even afford to go to a doctor like themselves. It's just like sad to think that like she helped so many people, but their family doesn't get anything for it, or like she didn't even get the proper treatment.
Yeah, 'cause they kind of like did it, not on purpose, but they did it, like they kind of tortured her in a way, because they didn't really help her at all. They kind of wanted to
Yeah.
see how it would progress.
Yeah, she would complain and complain, but they would just say, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine." Or like she wasn't allowed to check into the hospital for the longest time. Like she had to stay home. Like she would come to the hospital, get treated, and then go back. They wouldn't let her like stay in the hospital until she was like bedridden, pretty much. So.
I feel like that's gonna happen, or like not your specific situation, but I feel like the government is gonna, like Winston's gonna commit a crime of some sort, and the government's just gonna try to break him just because. Like they keep saying throughout the book, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. So like, if they like control or brainwash the smarter people into believing the system, then like their reign of power is gonna last longer because no one else is gonna start an uprising. Because ignorance is the government's strength, since no one else knows what's happening, especially since they rewrite history from years past, so no one knows what actually happened to get this life they live now.
I feel like your guys' book is more like on the topic of invasion of privacy, because I feel like ours is just kind of like.
Think of individual rights.
Because like I can like see where like invasion of privacy would happen, but like theirs is like really clean cut, and ours, I don't know. Like I see just like lying a lot, and then like I feel like the press really tried to get him on Henrietta's family, like because they're like the family wouldn't even talk to Rebecca when she like called and stuff. It was like weeks and weeks, and she wouldn't even get like a phone back or anything.
Who's Rebecca?
The person at the office.
So maybe you should tell them a little bit about Rebecca, what it tells you at the beginning, so they have an idea of who she is and why she's writing this book.
Oh, I can tell you a that story. Okay, so at the beginning it was like a it's like prologue, the woman in the photograph, and it's like talking about how she like went to school, and it was like this was I don't even know what year she was, but okay. It says like when I was 16 and sitting in a community college biology class. Wait, no, it's not that part. It was talking about like how no one like really knew about like HeLa cells, like no one knew like a lot about them, and they like didn't even call her like by her real name, and she like thought it was kind of like really impersonal, and then it kind of like interesting to like find more about it, and then she started to like talk to the family and stuff.
Well, she had like a picture of Henrietta on her wall, and she never knew like who it was, or what, like, who Henrietta was, or what she did, like why it was so important, and then she like researched more into it, and that's how she got into the whole story.
Have they gotten to that yet in your book? The whole idea of her different names, who she was called and why, and what the confusion, how it was created?
Not really. No.
Okay.
It kind of brought up a little bit at the beginning, but like not very much. So.
I feel like with our author, it like reflects a lot of his personality into like the government. Like he's a hypocrite. Like it talks about how he was critical of communism but considered himself a socialist. He hated intellectuals, but he was also a literary critic. He hated cant and lying and cruelty in life and in literature. But then I feel like he's also very stubborn because he died of a neglected lung ailment. It's like he was probably feeling pain but didn't want to go see a doctor for it. And he had intense feelings and fierce hates. That's why I feel like he's like Winston Smith, and he's like has feelings against the government for like being like restricted and like tied down because of the cruelty and the repressiveness of the government.
It doesn't go into detail with like the different names, but I was kind of confused like on the second chapter when she was talking about, they were talking about like her early life, and it said like Henrietta Lacks wasn't born like with that name, but no one knows how it changed, because her first name, like her name used to be Loretta Pleasant. So I don't know how that changed to her Henrietta Lacks. I don't know. I thought that was confusing, or like how their family didn't take away like the kids sooner from like the dad. Because it says, like, okay, Henrietta's father was a squat man who hobbled around on a cane he often hit people with. Family lore has it that he killed his own brother for trying to get fresh with Eliza. So, like, he didn't have patience for raising the children, or, like, when, I feel like her mom should have taken them away from him sooner. Like, even if, like, the family would have thought that he killed his own brother. I don't know. I just thought that was weird, so.
Different times.
Do you guys have anything to add?
Along with the thought police, there's Winston talks about this girl who he feels has been spying on him. I think it's the same girl who he likes, but at the same time he dislikes because he thinks she may be part of the thought police but have a specific role as being the spy. And he thinks that she's spying on him wherever he goes, and ends up like, where we leave off, when he comes out of the store where he visited the guy who he got his diary from, that the girl was standing outside, and he sees him and then kind of runs forward away from him, only to realize that he's got to somehow face the challenge of overcoming either getting arrested or overcoming what she may do to him.
What I thought was weird is how Winston can dream of his mother. He can't remember what happened before any of that. He can remember when his mother died, and like he can dream about that, but he can't remember how anything came to be, like any history of how he got there or where it was going or about his wife. Or he can remember some of that, and he can remember some of his mother, but not a ton. It's kind of like the government brainwashed him to just be like monotone and do what they like programmed to do, like wiped him and reprogrammed.
Okay, so when Sean's talking about that Winston has this dream, he can't remember his mother. The idea of history being rewritten or changed, does that connect for you guys anyway yet in your book?
Did you say history or like rewritten?
Mm-hmm.
Not really, not yet.
The only thing would maybe be about the youngest, like Deborah, maybe. That's kind of really, because she didn't really remember anything herself. She was just told.
Okay, so part of your search, and it might not because you're not far enough into the book yet, part of your search is going to be Rebecca talking to Deborah and getting Deborah's, she needs information from Deborah, and you'll find out what Deborah is like, but that'll probably connect more for you. At the beginning of your book, like of the Henrietta Lacks, the second chapter, Rebecca tells us she's done her best to capture the language with which each person spoke, and wrote, dialogue appears in native dialects, passages from diaries, and other personal writings are quoted exactly as written. And that's something that you guys will want to take into consideration is, what are they doing with words? Do you remember?
Oh, didn't they make a new language?
The new Newspeak.
The Newspeak, right.
Like
And
no one speaks.
then, yeah, right. Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, you're kind of right. But you should know what that is and how it differs from the old speak. It says here, as one of Henrietta's relatives said to me, this is Rebecca, the journalist writing here, if you pretty up how people spoke and change the things they say, that's dishonest. It's taking away their lives, their experience, their selves. Part of this is Rebecca Sloot giving back to this family some of what's been taken away from them. When, I wonder if it says here. Okay, so the cells, this Immoral Life of Henrietta Lacks, her cells are the HeLa cells. That's why it's in bold here. When they took cells and they did experiments on them, you know, in order to keep track of whose cells were whose, or which cells were which, they didn't want your whole name on them because they didn't want, you know, that being, these are Henrietta's cells, right? So they were marked HE for her first name and LA for her last name. And that's where some of the confusion came in. That was like this Helen Lane or something for a while, and who was this?
Oh, okay. Because it was like Helen Larson. And
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of shortening of changing of things that causes this confusion is a lot like the Newspeak and how it causes the change. The words are shortened, you know, instead of good, it's ungood, that sort of thing. When you're talking about the changing of history in 1984 and how things are not the way they always appear and why that is done, and what do they call the tube where they put the stuff in that disappears when he's working at the news ministry. Maybe even gotten that far yet. Okay.
He's working at the new, when it
You know when he,
disappears.
yeah, what's that tube?
Speak, no.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
But that thing too, where they change what, like history was one way, but the government wants it to appear that something else happened, so they actually go back and change history. And that's something like with this, getting to the bottom of, you're going to find out there are so many discoveries that were made because of these HeLa cells, because they lived on. They wouldn't die. That was the problem with doing experiments. A lot of like looking for a solution to polio, like you had mentioned, and there'll be other things in here too. This is a huge momentous discovery that she had these cells because they are at the basis of like even now, if you're doing lab work and you're using what do they call that, to grow a substance to grow your cells in, to reproduce them. What do you call it? This is what it's from. They're from HeLa cells.
Petri dish.
Yeah, but they put what's the solution? You have to buy to feed them.
Oh, I know.
That would be the HeLa cells, because they keep growing, they keep producing whatever it is, they'll produce them. As you go along, you'll see all like when she went in, things like consent forms and making sure that your patients knew what they were reading, that sort of thing, that didn't exist. Okay, so she doesn't know, she doesn't have the education to even know, what she's signing is going in, or what's going to happen to those cells later. And that's part of the big controversy, that this family didn't even know that these were her cells. And people have been making money off of these cells through this research for a long, long time. And then they have no insurance. So part of this is, you have the rewriting of history, and in some ways, this is rewriting the history in a good way, that the truth would come out. But you'll find all sorts of crazy stuff. And it might be because you haven't gone far enough. But how people's individual rights are kind of stepped on as you go along. There'll be studies and things like that. And, it's very sad, some of it. I don't know if there's any way you can really pay back the family, but it impresses me that as you read this, you'll find out just how, like this doctor. Have you gotten into Dr. Gay yet? Okay.
I was confused, even with, the different names or whatever.
Right.
He went on, his first TV interview or whatever, and he didn't say her name at all. But then that one girl that was close to him, said that he went and visited her in the hospital, but there was, no...
Right.
I don't know, I was confused
And,
about that.
okay, so there's no other documentation of it. Okay, so hopefully from this, some of it will bring about, how much of this is true and how much, can you confirm is true, different stories, different angles, that sort of thing. But even, here you have, and you'll get into this too, you have Johns Hopkins, which is thought of as a hospital. And that's where this takes place, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. This is a very, now you look at, you want to get treated, man, Johns Hopkins,
Number one.
Yeah. But it grew in a horrible part, it still is in a horrible part of Baltimore, a very poor, dangerous part. I mean, I know Eric went out there to look at it when he was a Christian, and they would not even let them in unless you had some reason to be in the hospital. I mean, they had armed guards. That's it. You stay out. Because it is in such a dangerous part of the city. But at the time it got started, it was a highly black area. And they'll have stories in there about, the people are terrified because there are these rumors that go around about the hospital snatching up, black people being snatched up in this area, that they're going to do experiments on. And, there's also this kind of that might not be true, but it's their truth because that's what they think, because they feel like they've been not told the truth in going to, because this was still segregation. There's the black part of the hospital and the white part of the hospital. They don't mix, that sort of thing. And so, that the treatment would not be the same, that sort of thing. You might get taken advantage of. And, this is the Tuskegee Airmen experiment with the syphilis. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Blood separate